Peter Hitchens. But he makes a case that the Conservative Party hasn't really been conservative for a couple of decades. Any comments on that? How do you feel about his perspectives? Do you share them? Are you optimistic that, in fact, the embers can be stoked back into a fire?
Well, I share your high regard for Peter Hitchens. I think he is a very interesting thinker and a good writer and challenges conservatives in an effective way, whilst being broadly on our side. I think the Conservative Party lost its confidence after Tony Blair won 3 elections in a row. And we came to the conclusion between 2005 and 2010 that the only way to be elected was to be a bit more like New Labour. And we tried that. We then still didn't win the election. But we have then governed in that way, or certainly we did in the coalition because we had no choice. The Lib Dems were there. Then we haven't had much of a majority until 2019. Then when we got a majority, we were hit by COVID and were dealing with Brexit, which was a very conservative thing to do, but was slightly above and beyond conservatism. So I think there is truth in his analysis. And what Conservatives need to do is to make the case. We need to make the case for conservatism. Why will this make people better off? Why is it... The Archbishop of Canterbury, who I actually hold in very high regard, I think he is a genuinely holy man, was speaking about immigration yesterday and saying that the policy of sending people to Rwanda was immoral. Now, we need to make the case for why conservatism is, in fact, moral and good. In my view, sending people to Rwanda is moral and good because it breaks the stranglehold of people traffickers on an illegal trade that is risking people's lives coming across the channel. That seems to me a morally good thing to do. And it requires action to be taken to deter people from coming. And the best way of doing that we have been able to come up with is to send them to Rwanda. And actually Australia did something similar and reduced the number of deaths of people trying to get to Australia. Because you had people coming in leaky boats and all sorts of terrible things.
Large numbers of deaths.
Large numbers of deaths. And those stopped. Mm. Now, surely that is moral. And Conservatives shouldn't be frightened of making the moral case when the left is making the moral case against us.
I think you raised 2 really interesting points there that I feel people on the centre and the centre-right are not as good at as people from the left. The first is make the case, build a constituency. I hear some of those who have followed me saying, John, there's no constituency for economic reform or for tax reform or for debt reduction. I don't know that there ever was. You've got to go out and build it. You've got to make the case. And then the second point that I think you raise is that the left is extraordinarily good at prefacing every policy, prescription or pronouncement with a moral statement. They go to the heart first and then try, if they ever do, to reach the head, whereas centre-right people tend to be cold, analytical, this is the way we'll do it because this is the way to get a sweet set of numbers. We've got to, I think, if it's an economic argument, for example, state the moral case. Good economics is good outcomes for people. And we're not very good at it.
Completely agree with you. You have to make the case. It's very interesting. You will know this better than I do, but I believe not that many years ago, Australia was thinking about introducing identity cards. And opinion polls showed something like 80% of people were in favour of identity cards. The case was then made against identity cards, at which point about 80% of people were against identity cards. And one should make the case and not be too influenced by opinion polls. If I say to you, would you like more taxes to fund the NHS? You probably won't, but most people say yes, because why? It's a good and nice thing to do. When I come to you and say, okay, can I have an extra 5% of your income? You say, no, why should I give you that? And you've got to think through what people mean in opinion polls and whether they are just saying something that they think sounds good and nice to the person they're talking to, or whether they absolutely believe and understand the case. And Conservatives need to make the case better, and we need to show that actually our well thought through prescriptions are more caring and better for society as a whole than the Labour Party is wearing its heart on its sleeve.